You know, whenever I hear the term process server, my brain just immediately goes to the movies.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, it's always some guy in a trench coat.
Right. Like I'm picturing Seth Rogen in Pineapple Express or maybe the classic pizza delivery disguise. You know, they
Right.
knock on the door, extra pepperoni for Mr. Smith, and then boom.
You've been served.
Exactly. And then they just sprint away across the lawn.
It's a very sticky image in pop culture. It's always chaotic and usually played for laughs. Like the server's this scrappy underdog just trying to trick someone.
Yeah, it feels almost low rent. Kind of like a prank war, but with lawsuits. But for today's deep dive, we are going to completely dismantle that image.
Good, because the reality is vastly different.
It really is. We're looking at a stack of documents today, blog posts, legal compliance protocols, service descriptions, and even a transcript from a podcast called Paper Trails. And it all centers around this one company called Lafayette Process Servers LLC.
And honestly, looking at this material, it reads less like a script for a stoner comedy and more like a briefing for a tactical military operation.
Seriously, I'm seeing terms in here like GPS satellite tracking and body camera evidence. Oh, and law enforcement grade databases. It's intense.
It really is. And the big headline driving our deep dive today is their expansion. They are moving out of their home base in Lafayette and setting up a major footprint in the New Orleans metro area.
Right. Specifically targeting Metairie, Jefferson Parish, and the Orleans courts.
Which is a huge move.
It is, but, and this is why I really wanted to cover this for you listening, this isn't just a generic local business opens new office kind of story. This is a look at how the legal system actually functions in 2025.
Exactly. It's the difference between some guy with a roll of tape and what the sources are calling ironclad proof.
Ironclad proof. That phrase pops up a lot in these documents.
Multiple times, yeah.
So our mission today is to figure out what that actually means in practice. Like, how do you take something as old-fashioned as handing a person a piece of paper and turn it into this high-tech data service? And why does this expansion into Metairie matter so much if you're involved in a lawsuit?
Well, the short answer is that if the paperwork isn't right, the lawsuit basically doesn't exist. But the long answer, that's where all this technology and logistics comes in.
Let's start with the geography then, because I think if you aren't from Louisiana, or even if you are, you might easily miss why this specific location matters so much. The sources highlight they set up shop at 1 Galleria Boulevard, Suite 1900 in Metairie.
Right, which is a very specific and strategic choice.
To me, it just sounds like a nice corporate address. Why is that such a big deal?
Well, you have to understand the total nightmare that is New Orleans logistics. You have the Mississippi River physically cutting the region in half. So you have the West Bank and the East Bank.
Okay.
And connecting them, you basically just have the Crescent City Connection Bridge.
Oh, man. And anyone who lives down there knows that bridge is a massive choke point.
Exactly. Now, the 24th Judicial District Court, the 24th JDC, is in Gretna. That's over on the West Bank. But a huge number of the actual law firms and corporate headquarters are in Materi on the East Bank.
Ah, I see where this is going. If you're a lawyer sitting in Metairie, you do not want to pay your paralegal to sit in gridlock traffic for 2 hours just to file a single document in Gretna.
It's a massive waste of billable hours. So by positioning themselves at 1 Galleria BLD, which is right at the intersection of the I-10 and I-49 corridors, Lafayette Process Servers has essentially solved a massive logistics problem.
They're acting as the bridge.
Literally and figuratively, yes.
Yeah.
The sources explicitly mentioned they are targeting that daily service and filing market, specifically for the 24th JDC.
So they do the daily traffic run that nobody else wants to do.
Basically. And it allows them to pivot really easily.
Yeah.
From that spot, they can hit the Orleans Civil District Court downtown or the federal courts in the Middle and Eastern districts. It's a very smart hub-and-spoke model.
It really signals that they aren't just a local Lafayette operation anymore. They're making a play to be a regional powerhouse. And they actually made this announcement in a pretty interesting way, too. They didn't just buy a billboard.
No, they launched a verified profile in the MyParishNews directory.
Right. Why go that route?
Think about who their customer is. It's a stressed-out attorney or maybe a landlord who's losing money every single day. A bad tenant stays put. They need to sue someone immediately.
And they need to know the person they hire isn't going to just take the retainer and disappear into the bayou.
Trust is the absolute currency here. So by listing on a verified directory like MyParishNews and linking it to their chamber-verified status, They are creating a digital paper trail of legitimacy. They're telling those New Orleans lawyers, we are real, we are here, and we are accountable.
Okay, so they have the location and the trust factors locked down. Now I want to get into the spy stuff I mentioned earlier.
The tactical stuff.
Yeah, the sources use the phrase tactical process service, which just sounds, I don't know, it sounds aggressive.
It does sound aggressive, but in reality, it's entirely defensive.
How so?
Let's look at the technology they deploy. The two big pillars are GPS verification and body cameras. Let's tackle the GPS first because it solves the single biggest legal headache in this entire industry.
Which is people lying.
Effectively, yes. In legal terms, it's the motion to quash for insufficient service.
Okay, let's unpack that for a second. What does that mean in plain English?
Picture this. You sue someone for $50,000. A process server goes to their house and hands them the papers. The defendant takes them, throws them in the trash, and then shows up in court or has their lawyer show up and says to the judge, Your Honor, I moved to quash this case because I was never served. I don't know who that guy was, but he never came to my house.
And without proof, it's literally just one person's word against another.
Exactly. And judges are incredibly busy. If there's a shadow of a doubt, they might just toss the service to be safe. That delays the case by months and costs the client real money.
So how does the GPS fix that?
The sources say Lafayette Process Servers logs every single service attempt with exact GPS coordinates. So it's not just a handwritten check mark on a clipboard that says done. It is a digital timestamp with precise longitude and latitude.
So the lawyer can say, actually, Your Honor, here is the data log. Our server was standing at exactly 29.9 degrees north, 90 degrees west, at 4:1 p.m. on Tuesday.
Right. It transforms a totally subjective claim of, I was there, into objective, hard data. It's incredibly hard for a defendant to argue with a satellite record.
Okay, I buy the GPS. That makes total sense. But then they take it a step further with the body cameras. And this is where I start to feel a little uncomfortable about it.
Uncomfortable how?
I mean, I'm used to seeing body cam footage on the nightly news involving police stops, right?
Yeah.
But for a private company, if I open my front door and some guy is pointing a camera at my face, I'm going to feel like I'm being swatted.
That is a very valid reaction. But you have to look at the context provided in the source material. They specifically mention using these for difficult serves.
Oh, okay. People who really, really don't want to be found.
Exactly. People who are highly evasive or potentially volatile. Process serving can be genuinely dangerous. You are literally the bearer of bad news. People get angry. Sometimes they get violent.
So the camera is mainly a safety deterrent.
Safety is definitely part of it. But the real core value, going back to that ironclad proof concept, is about evidence preservation.
Evidence that the handoff actually happened.
Right. If a defendant goes to court and claims the server threw the papers in a puddle and ran away, or he didn't tell me what these documents were, but the video shows a polite, clear handoff where the server identifies themselves and verbally explains the documents while the argument is over before it even begins.
It's the ultimate rebuttal.
There's actually a great quote in the source material from Scott Franke. He's the guy running this operation. He says they record difficult serves to, quote, protect the client's case in court. That's the key phrase. It's not about surveillance just for the sake of spying. It's about ensuring the case doesn't get thrown out on a technicality.
We actually have a testimonial in the notes that backs that up. It's from a verified New Orleans litigation attorney named Mike D. He says, quote, Scott and his team are the only servers we trust with difficult cases in South Louisiana. The GPS proof makes all the difference in court.
Which perfectly validates the strategy. Attorneys do not care about the technology just because it's cool gadgetry. They care because it secures their win. It makes the service unbreakable.
So we've got the location and we've got the tech. But let's look at what they're actually doing day to day. The sources list a bunch of different service levels. You've got routine rush and then same-day service.
That same-day option speaks volumes about the intense pressure of the 24th JDC and the Orleans courts.
Why is same-day so critical? Can't a lawsuit just wait until tomorrow?
Not always, no. Sometimes a judge signs a temporary restraining order or an emergency motion regarding child custody at, say, 2:00 p.m. It absolutely needs to be served by 5:00 p.m. or it expires or the opportunity is lost. If you are just a solo operator, what the industry calls a paper hanger, you might not have the bandwidth to drop everything and rush over there.
Paper hanger. I saw that term in the text. It sounds a little derogatory.
It is a bit of an insult, yeah. A paper hanger is the industry slang for someone who does the absolute bare minimum. They just take the paper to the door, literally hanging it and walk away. They don't verify, they don't log GPS, they just do the blind drop. Lafayette Process Servers is distinguishing themselves by offering what they call litigation support,
Right, because they aren't just delivering packages. The outline explicitly mentions courthouse logistics.
which is the totally unglamorous plumbing of the legal system. Making daily runs to the Gretna Courthouse to file documents, physically researching archives. It's tedious, but if you don't do it perfectly, the entire case stalls.
And then there's a specific niche in the sources that I found really interesting, which is eviction services.
Oh yeah, that is a high-volume, high-stress area of law.
They mention the 5-day notice to vacate and the formal rule for eviction, but there is a specific note in the source about the parish line. Why does the parish line matter so much for an eviction?
This is a classic example of why lawyers need highly local experts. The eviction laws might be statewide, but the actual procedure varies wildly depending on which parish you are standing in.
Explain that to me, because if I'm a landlord, isn't an eviction just an eviction?
Not at all. Evicting someone in Jefferson Parish, say in Metairie, usually involves the 24th JDC, or Justice of the Peace Court. But the second you cross the parish line into New Orleans, you are now dealing with the first or second city courts.
So different judges, different rules.
Different judges, different filing fees, different local forms. In Orleans, the rule for eviction hearing is a very specific formal event. If you mess up that initial notice to vacate, like if you miss a deadline by a single day or use the wrong legal language, or if you tape it to the door when the judge required you to hand it to a person, the judge in Orleans Parish might just throw the whole case out.
And then what happens? You just appeal.
No, you start completely over. You have to reissue the notice, wait another 5 days, refile the rule. And meanwhile, your tenant is living in your property for free for another month.
Ouch. So knowing exactly where that parish line is and which court requires what is literally money in the bank for a landlord.
Precisely. And the source explicitly says they handled the rule for eviction with that ironclad proof. Because in eviction court, tenants very often claim they never got the initial notice. It's probably the most common defense. The GPS and body cam just shut that defense down instantly.
Now I want to pivot to the part of the document that sounded the most ominous to me. Advanced skip tracing.
Ah, yes. The dark art of finding people who really do not want to be found.
The text says they use law enforcement grade databases. It sounds like they have the power to find literally anyone. It frankly sounds a little scary. Like, could they just find me right now?
Well, they definitely have incredibly powerful tools. Skip tracing involves aggregating massive amounts of data, credit headers, utility bills, license plate scans to figure out where a person is actually living right now, not just where their ID says they live.
But, and this is a massive but that I saw in the compliance documents, there's a major red flag warning attached to this.
Yes, and we need to be very, very clear about this because this is where the industry often gets totally misunderstood. The source material includes a highly specific disclaimer regarding legal compliance. Lafayette Process Servers LLC are not private investigators for the general public.
So I can't just hire them to spy on my ex-boyfriend to see if he's cheating.
Absolutely not. If you call them for that, they will hang up on you.
Okay, so where exactly is the legal line drawn?
The source specifically cites the Louisiana Code of Civil Procedure, CCP Article 1293. This article authorizes them strictly as court-appointed process servers. The disclaimer states clearly, any skip tracing or investigative work discussed is performed strictly in connection with a process service under court appointment.
Got it. So there has to be an active lawsuit first.
Correct. They are looking for a named defendant to serve them constitutional due process papers. They are not looking for your lost cousin or checking up on a spouse or doing background checks for a Tinder date. That is a hard legal boundary. If they cross that line, they would be acting as unlicensed private investigators, which is highly illegal. They stay strictly in the lane of litigation support.
It's a really important distinction for you to keep in mind. They have these big brother level tools, but they are practically chemically locked, so they only work when a court essentially says go.
It's the difference between targeted harassment and constitutional due process. The court order is the key that unlocks the tools.
Let's talk about the human element here for a second. We've mentioned his name a couple of times, but who is the driving force behind all this expansion? The sources point heavily to Scott Frank.
Scott Frank is a really interesting figure in this space because he completely breaks the mold of the silent process server. Usually these guys want to remain totally invisible, but Scott is described as a court-appointed expert with decades of experience, and he's actually a content creator.
Yeah, I was genuinely surprised to see a transcript from a podcast called Paper Trails in our research stack, a whole podcast about process serving.
It sounds incredibly niche, but it's actually brilliant marketing. In the transcript, Scott is discussing the expansion himself. He says, quote, We know the Gretna Courthouse. We know the Metairie corporate corridors. He is proactively positioning himself as an industry thought leader.
It's not just, hey, I deliver papers. It's, I deeply understand the legal ecosystem.
Exactly. And notice who is sponsoring that podcast. The source mentions a local business sponsor called 337 Media.
I saw that. They do websites and local SEO for Acadiana brands. Why would that be included in the source stack?
It reveals the digital ecosystem these modern legal businesses operate in. Process serving used to be a pure Rolodex industry. You knew a guy who knew a guy. It was very old school. But now, if you are a lawyer in New York needing to sue a corporation in Metairie, you aren't looking at a physical phone book. You are Googling.
Right, you're looking for a sleek website, you're checking online reviews.
You are looking for that verified badge we talked about earlier. By partnering with a digital agency like 337 Media, Scott Frank is ensuring that when someone searches for process server Materi, his firm shows up with that high-end professional sheen. It's a total digitization of traditionally blue-collar industry.
Before we wrap up the analysis of the people involved, there is one more major disclaimer that appears over and over again in the text, usually right next to the compliance stuff. We are not attorneys.
It seems so obvious, but it is legally necessary for them to state it repeatedly. They provide logistical support. They can tell you exactly how to get a paper to a defendant legally. They can tell you where the clerk's office is in Gretna, but they cannot, under any circumstances, tell you what to write in the actual lawsuit.
They can't give legal advice or tell you if you're going to win your case?
No. They are purely the messengers. Granted, they are messengers armed with body cams and satellites and law enforcement databases, but messengers nonetheless.
So bringing this all together, we started with the idea of the guy in the fake mustache jumping out of a bush, but what we've actually found in these sources is something completely different.
We found a highly organized company, Lafayette Process Servers LLC, that is treating the legal system like a complex logistics and data challenge. They've moved into Metairie at 1 Galleria Bile VD, specifically to dominate that traffic flow between the 24th JDC and Orleans Parish.
They're using GPS to create this ironclad proof so defendants literally can't lie about being served. They are using body cams to handle the high conflict nature of the job and protect the evidence for the lawyers.
And they are doing all of it under a very strict framework of legal compliance, specifically CCP Article 1293, to ensure they don't drift into being private eyes.
It really changes how you look at a lawsuit. You always think about the lawyers arguing in court, the dramatic law and order stuff, but you almost never think about the physical, grueling work of getting the paper from point A to point B.
And that's the biggest takeaway for me. We live in this incredibly frictionless digital world. We can send emails instantly across the globe. We can transfer thousands of dollars with a swipe on a phone. But the legal system ultimately still relies on a human being physically walking up and handing a stack of papers to another human being. It's a physical gear turning inside a digital machine.
That is such a great image, the human gear.
And what Lafayette Process Servers is doing is basically upgrading that gear. They are taking that physical analog moment, the handoff, and wrapping it in digital armor. The GPS coordinates the high-def video, the data logs. They are trying to make that messy physical act as reliable and trackable as an email delivery receipt.
It's taking the uncertainty out of the one part of the legal system that has historically always been the most chaotic.
Speed and certainty are always worth paying for, especially when the court filing deadline is 5:00 p.m. and the traffic on the Crescent City connection is backed up all the way to Clybourne Avenue.
So here is a final provocative thought for you to chew on as you go about your day. We talked heavily about the body cameras. We as a society generally accept that the police wear cameras for public accountability, but now we have private companies acting as officers of the court wearing them too.
It raises a genuinely fascinating point. When you are served a lawsuit, it's technically a private civil legal matter. But once that camera rolls and that GPS pin drops, your reaction, your exact location, and your demeanor are now permanent data points stored on a server somewhere.
Right. Does the surveillance technology that guarantees our due process also erode a little bit of our fundamental privacy? It sort of turns the basic act of being legally notified into a permanent surveillance event.
It's the ultimate modern trade-off for Ironclad Proof. Perfect accuracy comes at the cost of your anonymity.
Definitely something to think about the next time you look out your window and see a delivery driver walking up your driveway and you wonder, is that a pizza or is that a subpoena? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the surprisingly tactical world of modern process serving. We'll catch you on the next one.